For some people, they might think it's over as they get a little older. I hear really young people say it too. They're like, man, I'm 32, man, and this is falling apart and that's falling apart. I'm like, whoa, 32 is very young. 42 is very young. I think 52 is still really young.
But do you think somebody has to actively seek discomfort?
Who's wearing these Hoka shoes? Who's wearing these New Balance shoes and
Skechers?
They need to kind of find like a resistance and sort of lean into it a little bit. And you need to do it gradually. Anything works in the beginning. You'll gain a little bit of muscle size from just going to the gym and like dicking around. The way that you train is going to dictate how you get.
How do you make the diet a little bit easier?
For people that are like just kind of starting out, there's really no reason to go on any sort of really hardcore crazy diet.
Do they have to think about this every day in everything they do?
Being in shape and being out of pain will probably be the most important job that you ever do.
Who do you think had the best WWE intro music?
Man, it's tough, So Hulk Hogan, back in the day, like a long time ago, he had Eye of the Tiger.
Wow.
And then it turned into Real American, which both were great. But when he came out to the Eye of the Tiger, it was pretty amazing. Mm. And then you can't really beat Stone Cold.
That's what it is for me.
Right? Mm-hmm. The broken glass, you hear the broken glass. And you just know all hell's going to break loose. Yeah. Like whoever had that idea to have the broken glass, that was amazing. Mm-hmm. That was really smart, whoever did that. Yeah. The Rock is always good. Like, his music was kind of like whatever, but his, You Smell What the Rock is Cooking would play over the thing. And then you just knew he's going to come out and talk trash. Mm-hmm. So that was always a good one. But yeah, man, there's a lot. I like John Cena's thing. I don't know why his thing sounds so like Mexican with all the horns and stuff, but I dig it.
So yeah, for me, it's definitely Stone Cold. I think I got the most excited when The Rock came out, but like if you just listen to The Rock's intro, The Rock says, right. And just like, but I'm not The Rock. I can't get too hyped up about this. Mm-hmm. But Stone Cold, you hear that glass break and you're just like, let's go. Like it's on. John Cena's dope because he's like, your time is up. My time is now.
Right.
I'm like, yes, let's go. That'll get you fired up.
Yeah, that was amazing. And then, you got Vince McMahon too, who shouldn't be outdone. No chance in hell. And he'd come out with the way he'd walk, he'd walk all crazy to the ring. But all that stuff's so much fun, man. Like when it's like the guys in the ring, there's some other guys in the ring. And then like, the Undertaker's music comes on.
Oh yeah. They get so scared.
The Undertaker had great like ambiance and like setup and everything too. Like supposedly they would crank the air conditioning up a little bit when he'd come out. They get the lights dim and then his thing, bong, bong, and then he'd come out. And he also came out to like American Badass, which was kind of cool when he did that, when he was kind of like the motorcycle Undertaker.
Yeah. I kind of missed the era of like the Dead Man or whatever they called him.
Dead Man Walking.
Yeah, I was. I started watching when he came back with American Badass, and that was super cool too. That was really fun.
Yeah, one of my favorite Monday Night Raw ever was stuff was going on with Stephanie McMahon and Test, I think. And they were like getting married or some shit like that. I don't know. And the Undertaker was like haunting Stephanie McMahon's dreams. And then Stephanie McMahon went to go and get into a limo. And she was like, I'm trying to go to like, a party or something or something like that. She gets in and the Undertaker's driving. Yeah. He goes, "Where to, Stephanie?" And he just takes off. Like that stuff was so much fun. Or watching Stone Cold with the beer truck and like driving the Budweiser, beer truck. And like, I think he like drove it right to the ring and then sprayed everybody with beer and everything. Like, they just did some amazing stuff.
And did they have Tom Brady throwing the cans of beer at him? Because I swear I remember they would throw it from like where like Lawler was, and then he would be like where they would like the wrestlers would walk down like the intro, right? Like I swear, like they would throw it that far and they'd just be like, and he'd catch it every time. Like, dude, who's chucking these beer cans? Because they have perfect accuracy. They had it down.
And Stone Cold was a hell of a receiver too.
Yeah.
Who knew he had like a golden glove over there? He's fucking catching
solid
everything. I went to one of the shows one time, and you know the show is a little different when you see it live versus when you see it on pay-per-view or when you see it on TV. When you see it live, there's like a lot more stuff that happens. Sometimes, you know, on TV they'll have a commercial break, and they're only on TV for so long. But I think I saw Stone Cold and The Rock, and Stone Cold, like, they just kept throwing him beer as he's like coming up the ramp. He's like leaving the ring, and he had like 5 or 6 beers. He had like 5 or 6 beers in the ring, and then he had 5 or 6 beers out of the ring, and he like leaves, and then he comes back out, and the fans go nuts again, and they're throwing him, and people are throwing him more beer. He's catching more beer and drinking. I'm like, he just got complete, and he just sits down. He like sits down on the ramp, and he's just completely hammered. I'm like, what are we even watching at this point? He's just like, we're just watching somebody else get completely drunk.
Watching alcohol poisoning happen in real time.
Yeah, it was amazing. I don't know why it was so exciting, but it was great. Smash them together, dump them everywhere.
Yeah. Dude, the good old days.
You know, a lot of those guys, you know, some of that stuff fits into the topic for today is that it's never too late. You know, we think for some people, they might think it's over as they get a little older. I hear really young people say it too. They're like, man, I'm 32, man, and this is falling apart and that's falling apart. I'm like, whoa, like 32 is very young. I think 42 is very young. I think 52 is still really young. You start getting in your like 60s and 70s, and then like we have to be like realistic about life expectancy. Like hopefully you make it past normal life expectancy, and hopefully you make it to like 80 or 90. But even if you do and you're 60, you basically only have like 30, you know, you got 3 more decades to go if you're able to make it to 90. But even if you're in your 70s or even if you're in your 80s, it still ain't over. Like if you can move, if you can figure out a way to do a little something, then you could probably do a little more something, and you probably can get yourself moving. And once you get yourself moving, we know motion is the lotion, and it's going to help you to kind of continue to move, help you get out of pain. My mother-in-law is a really good example. I have some family members that are good examples. My mother-in-law is 74, I think. And she was diagnosed with diabetes probably 15 years ago. She's not overweight. She's been able to manage her body weight for a long time, but she is diabetic. And so she has to watch her diet and pay attention to how much sugar and all that kind of stuff that she consumes, or tries not to consume hardly any of it. And she lifts. You know, she got into lifting. She got into walking. She has a dog. You know, her and I talked about a lot of this stuff. Like, yeah, get a dog. You know, because the dog needs to be walked. And if you care and love for your dog, then you're probably going to get that dog out at least once a day for a walk, hopefully. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, she's been doing a lot of stuff like that. But, you know, I think there's so much to talk about on this topic. You know, how should you train? I guess how to get into training. Like, if you haven't trained in a long time, if you haven't like lifted weights since high school, if you haven't ran since high school, maybe we're going to end up in a slightly different conversation than if we're talking about someone like myself or someone like Nsima or someone like yourself, Andrew, who really what we did is just switch. You know, we switched from like a couple things to a couple other things, but all of it had to do with movement, nutrition, like for a pretty long time, probably for 2 decades for you, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's. I mean, I'm getting close, which is pretty cool to say, because you think, well, I think, and I've been, I guess maybe it's been like my identity for a long time. It's like, oh, I'm still super new to all of this. But you're right. It was a switch from this to that, but it was almost like, you know, those things online where it's like, oh, pick your starting lineup, but you only have $5, and like, you know, everybody at the top who's really good is like cost $4, and everybody at the bottom is a little bit cheaper. It was sort of like I was giving all my money to like just trying to get jacked, and then now it's like I kind of spread it everywhere. Like I use $1 on all of it now. So even though it's a switch, I'm kind of doing more with a lot more efficiency. So it's like the dollar goes a lot further now. And so that's been like super helpful in keeping me consistent with it. And even though I've been kind of nursing an injury, keeping myself injury free to the point where I can't do the thing I like to do. Now, doing the thing I like to do is what got me injured, competing in jiu-jitsu, but the lifting, the exercise, all that didn't prevent me from doing jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, I definitely have done, powerlifting to the point where I'm limping around, hobbling around. I've done bodybuilding to the point where I'm limping around, hobbling around. I've done running to the point where I'm limping around, hobbling around, and waddling everywhere, And I really have worked on, just spreading everything out a little bit. Like, it doesn't all have to happen in one day. Not everything has to be so intense. You saw me lifting today, and I didn't lift like a complete sissy, but nothing I did was that hard. I did some push-ups. I did some squats. I ended up pushing the weight a little bit on the squats. I ended up doing some kettlebell sumo deadlift type thing. But the point is that the intensity is not so great, or the volume's not so great that I'm going to be like debilitated in any way. I don't think that people really look at it that way. I think they just think like, oh, I'm going in there and this is what I need to do to get jacked or to get in shape. And they're not thinking about the consequences. They're not really thinking about, it's kind of like the deep water, John Anderson, which I understand that mentality, and that can be great and that can serve you at certain times. But I think it also can be a huge mistake, because you want to be able to do stuff day in and day out. And if I come in here one day and say, hey, Andrew, let's go hit up a run, and we're going to do a 10-minute mile run. Andrew has the capacity to go do that. Might be breathing pretty hard, might be pretty tired. Even if I said 9-minute, he can probably hang in there for it, or we'll figure something out to get him to get him to do it for the day. But he doesn't run. And I think that's the thing that you want to try to do, is you want to be able to have capacities without necessarily even spending that much time doing other things, because you should be what we would like to call, you should be fit. And being fit is a really important piece of the puzzle. So if you only work on being jacked, or you only work on being strong, those are amazing things, and you should go after those things with everything you got if that's what your heart really desires. But if you find yourself banged up quite a bit, you're not really making the progress that you want, you actually most likely want to be leaner and probably more fit.
Yeah, it's funny. What you're talking about, like to open things up with, it is a weird perception, or I'll say misconception. I was rolling with the dude, and he was just like, oh, just my old body, and he's going in on why he can't go as hard, or why he has to take a break, whatever it may be. I've told this story before, but I haven't gotten that quite in depth. It was just during like some drilling. And he's kind of looking around. I'm like, you okay? Are you hurt? Like, you good? And he's like, yeah, just an old body. And I was like, oh, shit. Like, well, how old are you? And, I'm 39 and he's 35. And I'm like, whoa. Like, well, I got 4 years on you. So, like, let's keep moving. Come on, you're good. You're alive. And then you hear stuff that's been going around on the internet right now, saying that 38 years old is actually like midlife now. And I just think that a lot of people subscribe to like 30s old, 40s old, 50s like ancient now, it seems like. And it just sucks, because it limits what you believe you're capable of. And it just puts out this like crazy misconception, and it drops your expectations on what is actually doable. Now, there's tons of examples there. We're going to give out some extreme examples, but there's Mark Bell. There's a couple of other, professional athletes out there that are doing stuff. But the thing is, it's like we limit ourselves, but also when these expectations are dropped pretty far down, we always kind of make things a negative. So, right, oh, I'm not supposed to be able to do that because I'm too old. But then somebody gets a hair up their ass, and all of a sudden they start joining a gym. They join a rec league or whatever it is, and they're like, I'm the second coming of Tom Brady. And then all of a sudden they go way out of proportion, and they blow everything way out of proportion, and they start trying to kill themselves, and then they get hurt, and like, see, I told you. It's like, how come we can't do it both ways, It's frustrating.
Yeah, people, they sign up for, softball or something like that to sign up for a sport, which is amazing to sign up for a sport, but it's without any preparation. And they go to do the sport and like, oh my God, I tore my rotator cuff, or I tore my Achilles tendon, playing pickleball or something like that. And it's like, well, you haven't like sprinted in a long time, and you just asked your body to do all the stopping and starting, and maybe there should be a little bit of training, and that's the great thing about the gym. As much as the gym sucks, like I totally understand why people hate the gym, because there's elements to it that suck, but there's amazing elements to it too. And the one element that is amazing is all the controllable variables. So if you want to condition your Achilles tendon, you can very easily do that with a bunch of different exercises in the gym. There's calf exercises you can do, which are going to help strengthen and lengthen the calves. It's going to help strengthen your foot. In addition to that, there's, you got different machines for calves. There's certain things you can do for like your shin. You don't necessarily need a gym for some of these things. Like you can do like plyos and you can do jumps and stuff. But as we get older, if you just observe, you just watch your kid or watch someone else's kid and they're bouncing around. I mean, they kind of run everywhere. They sort of jump everywhere. And they just they actually fall down a lot too. Like they fall down. They don't fall like by accident. Like we fall, it's like an accident. Like we trip and we fall. A kid might trip and fall kind of, but it looks like it's on purpose. Like they make it look clean when they fall. They stumble and they just trip on their own feet sort of, and then they just boom, and they pop right back up. We're not really used to any of that. But if you want to have youth on your side, you should probably do a lot of the stuff that kids do, all the way up until like 10 or 11 is when you start to see like, oh man, my boy doesn't do that anymore. He doesn't jump around quite as much. And as they get to be 12 and 13 and so on, that just dwindles out of them. And I think one of the reasons why that disappears from most people is kind of this idea of like strength to weight ratio. I think when you're a little kid, you might not even really know why or whatever, but I think you're driven by your like physiology. I think physically you feel really good and you're excited and you just want to run across the room, and you're picturing that you have a cape on, like your favorite superhero, and you're putting your arms out and you're, being a madman, and then you run and you like slam into the wall or something. You just tend to like hit into a lot of stuff, and you do a lot of kind of crazy shit when you're young. When you're older, you're like, that's gonna hurt, because you're not like prepped for that. And I'm not saying that you should like, sprint around and act crazy, but doing some of those activities like that sometimes, or doing it in a controlled environment like the gym, would be a great idea.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my son, it's wild. He'll run in place or run throughout the house as fast as he possibly can. It's like, whoa, dude, that's insane. Because like I couldn't like run in place as fast as I can without really thinking about it, without being like, shoot, if I start to feel something, like that's going to be so embarrassing. Like, yeah, how'd you pop your hamstring? I was, running in place, but
in the kitchen.
Yeah, I think a lot of it has to do with, because you mentioned this before with like your dad. He's like, man, I've been through a lot of stuff. Let me start seeking more comfort than the opposite. Mm-hmm. But do you think somebody has to actively seek discomfort in order to kind of maintain, I'll say, their youth and, have longevity?
I think you need to be a little bit uncomfortable, because what do older people do? Who's wearing these Hoka shoes? Who's wearing these New Balance shoes and
Skechers?
Yeah, and old people they're cold, right? And they're all bundled up, and they're not really getting the sunlight the way they used to. And I think there's a lot of shit going on. I mean, I think that, for one, they're in pain, and two, they might just feel cold. Like their body just doesn't really work the same way as it used to. But why doesn't it work the same way? That's the key thing to think about. What about your 13-year-old son that goes out to the bus stop with no jacket on and it's 30 degrees, right? Like, why do they do that? Who the hell knows why they do it, actually? But they're able to regulate their own body temperature really well. Or your son, who's like just still like a little boy, he jumps in the water. It could be cold, right? You go to the ocean, he doesn't care. He's shivering. You're like, "Are you cold?" And he's like, "Nope." And his teeth are shattering and everything, or chattering, right?
Yeah, skin turning blue and everything.
Yeah, you're like, "Oh my God!" It's like the water's like 55 degrees. I don't know what he's doing out there, but they're able to regulate their temperature a lot better. But they also have a lot more exposure to that, It's not uncommon for like a couple friends that I know that have kids. Their kids are always naked, always naked. They hate clothes. They just boom, take them off. I think my kids did some of that, but like there's some kids that like they just really hate clothes.
That's where my son's at right now.
And if you're 50 or 60, walking down the street naked is probably not a great idea. But I do think you do need to be uncomfortable. I think that covering up your feet in these like super padded shoes and stuff, I think is making things worse. You are like your body is sort of calcifying, your body is slowing down, and you're kind of cushioning it, and you're kind of just trying to make that whole process more comfortable. But really what's going to happen is like just where does it stop? Where does the comfort stop? You park as close to you park as close to the grocery store as possible. Some people kind of unjustly get like handicap things and stuff. It's like, hey, why don't you leave that for the people that really need that? But there's people that they're just like, well, I can't walk, my feet hurt. And it's like, well, that's not the same as, there's other people with different considerations that are different than just having your feet hurt, So I think that people, people need to kind of find like a resistance and sort of lean into it a little bit. And you need to do it gradually. You don't want to do it out of nowhere. The first place to start, if you have a backyard, the first place to start is just kick off your shoes. If you have some grass, go and have your feet in the grass. And I realize certain areas of the country, like you can't do that certain times a year, but whenever you can do that, try to do that. That'll help toughen up and strengthen up your feet. And there's a lot of other things you can do. You can get our sandals that we talk about all the time. They're available at markbellslingshot.com. Those are our Power Flex sandals. You want to find something that allows your foot to be a foot and not something that's getting so cushioned all the time.
Mm-hmm. And you see that seeking comfort, whatever you want to call it, everywhere. Breakfast, right? I want my coffee to taste as good as possible. And I'm not saying trust me, I'm not trying to be like, oh, drink black coffee if you want to be strong and fit or whatever. Cause I love making my coffee taste good too, but it doesn't stop there, right? It's like, oh, we're having ribs. Let me dump barbecue sauce on everything. Let me have the dessert on everything and all that good stuff, right?
Every drink you have, every piece of food, and everything that you do every day needs to be cushioned or exciting in some way, or you can't do it or have it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so along with the shoes and trying to kick your feet off, I think another really easy spot to get some wins. And this, I can't remember which guest talked about it, but it was like, if it is a little bit colder outside, just be okay with wearing a little bit less than the big, huge jacket and that sort of thing. Just to make yourself a little bit uncomfortable, right? We're inside, we got the AC blasting. And so the second I go outside in weather that's 80 degrees, it's like, oh my gosh, it's so hot. I mean, and I know it gets to like 110 here in Sacramento. It's, but we're not allowing ourselves to get used to the slight little discomforts.
Yeah.
And that's super frustrating. How important is it though, to have that sunlight hit your skin on a regular basis?
Yeah, it's huge. I mean, we're learning more and more about this all the time, but the actual sun hitting your skin, you're going to be able to, it's going to help up your vitamin D levels naturally. And that's something that is really helpful to your immune system. But the sun there's not a disease. There's not something you can mention to me where I don't think that the sun is like helpful. And some people are probably thinking, oh, cancer. Well, cancer, a lot of times, not all the time, there's always outliers to everything. But you basically want to try to have your skin be conditioned to the sun to some degree. Even if you're super pale, you don't necessarily have to be able to handle like a UV of 10, which would be like you being outside in the middle of the day here in Northern California in the middle of summer. You don't necessarily need to get your skin conditioned to that, but you should be able to handle the first 2 or 3 hours of the day and the last 2 or 3 hours of the day where the UV is going, the UV index is going down quite a bit. The unfortunate thing is that we have like a weird relationship with the sun. You know, people get all excited when it's summertime. Some people want to like lay out by a pool or by a body of water, and they're like just bathing, like literally bathing in the sun. And that's not the worst thing in the world. If you already have kind of what's called like a solar callus, if you're already used to the sun, those can all be like decent ideas. But if you're very pale, then what people will do is they'll be like, oh, you need like at least some sunscreen on, because it's like you're kind of halfway guarding yourself from the sun while you're in this, like it just doesn't make any sense. And people aren't getting themselves accustomed to it or used to it. And so just the easiest thing in the world to do is just to pop outside occasionally. Like every time you go outside, it shouldn't be like you're coming out of a movie theater. You know, when you come out of the movie theater and it's like a Saturday and it's like, it's still like it's still like morning or afternoon. It's like 2 p.m. or something. And you're like, oh my God. It feels like it's like burning you. Like
a nuclear bomb went off. You're like, what's happening?
Yeah.
You got to pee really bad. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And it shouldn't be like that. You know, get yourself outside, you know, periodically throughout the day. The way that I usually do it is just through either like a walk or a run. You don't have to run, but get outside and get some sun exposure. It's really, really important for your kids too. Developing kids that are really young, kids that are teenagers, really impactful for your hormones, your sex hormones in particular. You know, we're just inside too much. And then sometimes people can make a big deal about like the blue light, and the blue light is a negative, but I would say the worst thing that you can do is to just completely get away from the sun and just be in be in the dark for too long. And it's not anything that you're not going to, no one's going to, there's going to be some people maybe, but for the most part, people aren't going to notice it having like a huge impact right away. It's going to be something it's going to take time for that lack of sun exposure to be a negative influence on you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And if you're listening and you're paying attention, right, if your feet are hurting and you continue to wear the soft, squishy shoes, it's going to get worse. If who knows what other ailment you may have, and you go outside into the sun and you have sunscreen on, that ailment's probably going to get worse, right? What other exposures that you can think of for somebody? Because I mean, we're getting kind of like all over the place. The whole like idea was to try to kind of, hold that longevity and be an athlete as you age. But is there something else that you can think of that we're kind of told to avoid that really is like we should probably go the opposite direction if we want to kind of maintain and hang on to a little bit of this athleticism?
Yeah, as I was mentioning earlier, just like resistance, you need to find you need to lift, or you need to pick things up. I mentioned jumping earlier. I think jumping and sprinting, I think these things are really important. Now, I don't really think that everyone has to necessarily go outside and do a sprint, although I would really love if people did that. That would be great. And it's what a cool capacity. I mentioned earlier, capacity. I love that word. I love that term. I love what it means. It means like if I ask you to go do a sprint with me, you should be able to do okay with it. You should be able to run at 90% of your fastest speed. I think that would be reasonable. And be like, okay, cool. You did that for 6 or 8 sets and you didn't get hurt. Then that's a great workout. But there's other ways to do it. You can do that on an elliptical. You could do that on a bike. You can do that with a ski erg. I mean, you could do that with a rower. There's just so many other options, so many other places where you can do some of these things. But yeah, I think, jumping is no one really jumps. It's rare for someone to even do something like step ups or lunges. These are just, they're not necessarily that associated with the gym, although that's where we kind of put them. But Squatting, deadlifting. And I don't really mean squatting and deadlifting like barbells necessarily, just some form of squatting, some form of deadlifting. I think these things are important, especially for people that just aren't moving that much. Picking up sandbags, maybe wearing a weighted vest on a walk, making your walks a little bit more intense so you can kind of keep that bone density up. But where I see people sort of falling apart the worst is their bodies, their spines and stuff are getting very stiff. Their range of motion is getting more and more limited as they get older. And that continues to get a little worse every day. And a lot of times it just kind of gets swept under the rug, kind of over and over again. So they'll train around it and they'll be like, yeah, my shoulder's falling apart, but they're not really trying to address it. And it's understandable because they're in pain. And so it makes sense. But there's a lot of older people that are out there doing it and they're doing a great job of it. And they figured out how to navigate it. And the whole point of this podcast today is like, I think you can figure it out too.
You're trying to get healthier and you're probably eating chicken for every meal or the same beef cuts for every meal. And trust me, I know how good some cuts can be. You can make anything taste good. But Good Life Protein is the place that you want to go if you want to start adding some different types of meats into your rotation. They got picanha, they got chorizo sausage, which is still great on the macros because they're using Piedmontese beef. They have lobster. They have all different types of fish. They have actually a bunch of different types of chicken too. They have lamb. I'm telling you, if you give it Good Life a shot and try some of their different meats, which are still great on the macros, you'll start to appreciate the things that you can get from different meat. Don't think too hard about that one. But check out Good Life because we're sure that you're going to love the taste and the quality. And it's good for your health. Andrew, how can they get it?
Yes, that's over at goodlifeproteins.com. And at checkout, enter promo code POWER to save 20% off your entire order. Or if you want to save even more, use promo code POWERPROJECT to save an additional 5% off your build box. Again, goodlifeproteins.com. Link is in the description as well as the podcast show notes. Something I was just looking up, I find really interesting. So Michael Jordan retired. And then he came back and played for the Wizards, right? And then when he retired, he was 40 years old. LeBron James is about to be 40 years old in December.
Right.
Those look like two completely different athletes at that age.
Yeah, just redefining the age, right?
Yeah. So you have somebody like LeBron James on this side of the spectrum that spends, over $1 million in making sure that his body works the way he needs it. And then you have the other side of the spectrum, which is unfortunately like a typical adult that doesn't pay any attention to it. When somebody's on this side of the spectrum where they don't pay attention to it, getting them to really do anything seems like a big chore. But do they have to think about this every day in everything they do? Like where do you think is a good starting grounds for taking care of their body?
Being in shape and being out of pain will probably be the most important job that you ever do, because you can't really do anything else for anybody if that's compromised too much. And so as ridiculous as some of that might sound, it's a job and you have to take it very seriously. It can be difficult. Like we like to try to, as fitness people, we like to try to say like, oh, we can try to make it a little easier, just go on a couple of walks and stuff, but it can be very difficult. It can get easier because you can get used to it. But how is that process of getting used to jujitsu? Like it's a bear, right? Like it's hard getting used to powerlifting. Like I don't really remember because I did it when I was so young, which is another thing to pass on to your children. Have them do tough things when they're young and they won't even really remember how tough they were. They'll just know how to swing a baseball bat. They'll know how to throw a baseball, and they'll know how to catch a football. And they won't really remember all the times that the football bounced off their face or hit. You ever have the ball hit your finger that weird way and it jams your finger? Like that shit hurts so bad. They won't really remember all the pitches they got hit by when they're trying to play baseball and stuff like that. And so trying to learn stuff when you're younger can be really useful. But it's a full-time job trying to manage your weight, trying to manage your nutrition. I mean, for the most part, we know what we're dealing with. Most people are just getting heavy, right? They're gaining a lot of body fat. And when they gain a lot of body fat, there's not necessarily muscle mass that goes along with it. And so they're getting fatter and they're getting weaker because you're adding more and more weight to a frame and to a structure that's not any larger. We do know that, through some overload training that you can get some pretty good results in terms of bone density, especially like if it's over a long period of time. And so if you have a more dense skeletal system, it will be a little easier for you to carry around a little extra weight. All the more reason, just one more reason to lift. So lifting is unbelievable for many different reasons. But when we start to look at some of the athletes that we have on this list today, every single one of them has, they have these movement practices. They have these lifting practices. They have some practices that allow them to do these things day in and day out. And that's the thing, as you were mentioning, like, does it have to be done, kind of every day? And that's just because we say it needs to be done every day doesn't mean to not do it if you don't think you'd have time to do certain things every day. What I mean by this needs to be done every day is I mean that you need to do something every day. And you could have a list of 20 different things and you could only do one of them every day, then you would be checking off your boxes. It doesn't have to happen. You don't have to do rope flow and something from the ATG app and pull-ups and lunges and squats and have your nutrition perfect all in one day. That could be spread out over the course of 5, 6, 7, 8 days, something like that.
Yeah, you're building up these habits that today one of them seems impossible or difficult. But then down the road, 10 of them you just do without even realizing it. Something else I just wanted to point out that, I don't know, man, right, there's a lot of us that are in pain, but I just find this stuff interesting because now I'm almost this age and it's just a weird perspective. But when I remember Cal Ripken Jr., like the Iron Man, right, that was his thing. He played all 21 seasons of his career. Like, dude, that guy is at least 1,000 years old, right? He retired at 41.
Wow.
I'm like, whoa, wait a second.
Yeah.
And then we were joking off air about Robert Parrish. So he's pretty old now, but he played for the Boston Celtics. Again, I think he was like the oldest player like ever in the league, or he had the most games or something. I forgot what the record was. He was only 43.
Oh, wow.
And I thought he was like at least like 70, like he looked that old.
Damn.
And so like, I don't know, man, I think we're just going in both directions pretty drastically. I think people are getting older and they're getting in better shape. And then people are younger in worse shape now. It's kind of a bummer.
It's tough, I think, Andrew, we're just like in our own world. And you and I, we and Nsima, we have this show and we talk to a lot of people in fitness, and our feed, on Instagram and everything else is kind of full of fitness stuff. Your wife loves fitness. Nsima's girlfriend loves fitness. My wife loves fitness. My brother loves fitness. Like, we're really surrounded by it. And we have some people in our lives that like, they're not obsessed with it, but they at least are probably, it's at least on their radar. They're trying, they're working on it. Maybe they're not doing a great job, but they have some activities. But, you get completely just like you got hit by like a rod of lightning when you go to the airport or when you go to Walmart or Target or a fair or something like that, in the summertime. And you're just like, wow, like, man, these people are just, it's not even just so much just like body fat. It's just a combination of, you're like, and I'm not trying to shame people necessarily, but I do think it's a shame. Like, it literally is a shame to not take advantage of the gifts that you have. Being like a human being, being a person is fucking awesome. And I think that you should do the best job you can to take advantage of that. It doesn't mean you need to be ripped or shredded or anything. I don't mean anything like that. What I mean, though, is I think it is, we all have some strength in us. We all have, and you're just going to abuse that and let that just not ever turn into anything. You're just going to get weaker and weaker and fatter until the day you die. Like, I just can't, that doesn't compute well with me. I don't understand that. And I think that is, I I think it's like a slap in the face to whatever creator we have. Like there's some sort of creator, something has created human beings. I don't know what it is or where it comes from, but I think it's the greatest thing ever created or invented or whatever words you want to try to use. It's the most complex thing. We understand a lot of stuff about a lot of different things, but we don't understand the human body. We have some understandings of some of the shit on how some of it works. But man, it is like the more you dive into it and the more you learn about biomechanics or the more you learn about just the human body, the more you're like, wow, we don't know shit. Mm-hmm. And so to me, I'm like, man, how is it? I do understand like bad habits. I understand like, you know, getting a little overwhelmed with stuff. But what I don't understand is just like, you can't go on a walk a couple times a week and get outside, you know. I just think there's these things that are so simple to do that if you're not doing them, I think you're cheating yourself.
That's very well said. Like we were talking the other day about, you know, I'm watching my son turn into, you know, his little self, human, and I'm like, I didn't do that. You know what I mean? Like, obviously, I'm not saying that like somebody else, you know, is his father. I'm saying like, obviously, yes, you know, my wife and I conceived this kid, and he's grown up, and he's our child. But I'm like, he's doing stuff that like I can never like how like he's way more capable than I'll ever be at certain things already. Like, there's something else at play here. So what you're saying there is like pretty powerful. I hope that caught with somebody. But the thing that does get me also, if you're in pain, you're unhappy, you don't like the way you look in the mirror, and the habits or the whatever it is, the food you're eating, the movement patterns, all this stuff led you there, and you don't like it, and tomorrow you do the same thing, and the following, and so on and so forth. It's like, you know, you eventually have to wake up. How do you help somebody wake up? Like, what do you tell a loved one that's like going down the same path? You know, like, yeah, how do you have that conversation?
Yeah, I think the first thing is, you have to communicate with that person or communicate with someone that's close to them. Because sometimes someone else might be a better communicator. Like if you come in there guns blazing, then that might not work so
Who's
great.
Who's going to carry the boats?
Yeah. I think having some grace for people and suggestions, recommendations, but also just simply asking the question if they even want to have the conversation. Like they might not be ready. They might not want to do it. Like I said earlier, like I understand why people hate the gym. Like it's, I sometimes hate it too. I guess I know what it's going to feel like, and I love the feeling of like just doing an all out set of like lateral raises or some shit or, you know, and I also like developed a skill with it, and then it makes me feel good, right? But I understand like why for some people they'd never really had that great of a gym experience, and they probably really haven't really had it make them feel good. Plus, the other thing that sucks about the gym is the recipe for hypertrophy and the recipe for strength is a long one and somewhat of a complex one, and it can take a lot of time. In the beginning, when you first start, though, one of the cool things about the gym is that anything works in the beginning. You'll gain a little bit of muscle size from just going to the gym and like dicking around, just messing around on some different machines and messing around with different things you saw, you know, someone else do on an Instagram clip. And you'll look at your shoulder and you'll be like, oh, wow, there's a tiny little, maybe if you get the right lighting, maybe there's something there, you know? And so you'll see some small changes, but eventually over time, it does take a long time. You know, if you're trying to end up with like a great physique, it takes a long time. It takes like a minimum of 10 years. You're trying to acquire great strength, takes 10 years. However, it doesn't take 10 years to be able to do a couple pull-ups. It doesn't take 10 years to be able to do a couple push-ups for most people. It doesn't take 10 years to be able to do, you know, some lunges. It doesn't, you know, and for each person, sometimes things need to be scaled because of where someone's starting. But there's a lot of just like little fundamental things you should be able to do. I think they're important, especially when we start to look at some of these monsters. Like, see if you can bring up a clip of Mark Felix. if you could click on maybe the video. I don't know if I sent you I did send you the video. Yeah, so let's just check out this video. This is sick.
Bam. So he's 34. We don't need audio.
Yeah, Mark is he's probably around 58 or 59 years old now. Longtime competitor in strongman, an absolute monster. You know, and then people can kind of look at this and they'll be like, oh, well, it's probably genetics. And this guy's like, because he's massive. He's massive. But people can kind of blame stuff on whatever they want. The fact is that this guy kept himself moving for a really long time. He's a legendary strongman. He's one of my favorite athletes. He just is like, he's ridiculous. Has the biggest freaking hands ever. He's just a massive, massive guy.
He's still competing?
I think he just retired.
Oh my God.
I think
shoot, he's 50. Oh my God.
Yeah, here he is in 2023. And
58.
I mean, he probably still is competing to some capacity. 58 years old. And also, like, he's been doing this for a long time too. So it's not like, you know, it's not like he hasn't been doing this that long. Mm-hmm. But these guys, they're doing it every day. The discipline of the food, the discipline of the mobility work. I'm sure he's been hurt, a zillion times. Mm-hmm. Obviously, nowadays it's hard to talk about age without talking about performance enhancing drugs. That's going to be kind of the first thing that people want to talk about. But I think that is easily answered and easily talked about via understanding, yes, strongman athletes do use performance enhancing drugs. But secondly, if you're 50 and you don't feel great, that's something that you can look into these days. You can go to a TRT clinic. You can, check out Merrick Health and see if that's something that maybe you need. I don't think everyone needs steroids though. And I think that, the main topic for today is try to stay on topic, but the main topic for today is to talk about like what you can do. Like what are the simple things you can do? Not just like blast testosterone or anything like that. That can be something that can be effective. And it's, everybody wants to talk about it all the time. I just did a podcast a couple days ago from my house. Somebody was interviewing me and my wife was like, man, that whole show was about steroids. I was like, that's all anybody ever wants to talk about. Mm-hmm. It's everyone's favorite topic. And I do think there's appropriate places for people to sometimes use some of these things. But anyway, I think that we can lift, basically for the rest of our lives. You can bodybuild. You could certainly do something like bodybuilding forever. Mm-hmm. Will Mark Felix be able to do the stone loading and all this other shit like for super long? Maybe not. After a while, his back or something might just not want him to do some of those movements. But hopefully he replaces those movements with other movements that still allow his back and his body to be strong. Yeah.
And then in some of those competitions, it showed 2023 or 24 where he was at his oldest, that he was still moving around a lot. And I don't know, I could be way off on this, but I feel like if you're just blasting steroids like everyone assumes, like it's not helping you be agile.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
No, it does not help you be a better mover in
any
way. I mean, almost everything I know about them would say the opposite of that, really.
Yeah, and he's moving. Yeah. So he is, he's literally moving,
moving, yeah.
You can't inject that that skill or that attribute, right?
Right. And that's why you want to try to focus on like more than just, straight up just regular lifting. I think some strongman has some application because of the fact that they're not only just like picking stuff up, but they're picking stuff up and moving it. See if you can pull up Sean Baker is a great example. Dr. Sean Baker, he's the guy that popularized the carnivore diet. Dr. Baker pretty much just eats steak and some ground meat and some eggs. And he doesn't really eat anything else. And he has some like world records on the rower. He's an absolute beast. I forget how far he rose and what the time is or whatever, but it's just something ridiculously insane.
Whatever it is, it's a world record.
Yeah, he's a fucking nutcase. And I want to say he's probably about 60 years old, right?
He's almost there. If not, he is, because just an animal. And he trains super hard. He does a lot of explosive movements too. Stuff that would...
More recently, he's doing plyos and he's doing jumping stuff. And he's talking about how he wants to, be a better mover.
Yeah, he does stuff that would really like... I would have to think about it for a while. Like I'd have to really scale it down, or else my body would it would hurt.
I think he's got the right idea though. Like, he's doing explosive movements. He's working on running faster. He's working on jumping higher. He has kept the Olympic lifts in there. He's a guy that does he used to do like Highland Games type stuff. And so I think he's always been a fan of basically training like a track athlete. This is the way track athletes train. And, doing like little hops and all these different things, they're not hard to do. You don't even have to jump up onto anything, what you're seeing Dr. Baker do. But sometimes jumping up on something gives you a good goal, but you can do like pogo hops and stuff too, where you just are literally jumping in place. But you could see here Dr. Baker, going all out on a sprint. He's into that. And so is Stan Efferding. Efferding's he loves doing sprints. Dr. Baker does a lot of sprints. I think it's not uncommon for him in a workout to do like 20 sets of sprints.
I'm just laughing at how small he makes that assault bike.
It looks comical. It's like, what is he doing? And he doesn't look like he's like going that nuts on it, but like, he's...
he's probably breaking the calibration on all that. And he's another...
he's like jumping right out of his house.
Yeah, so he's around 60 years old, no TRT, just carnivore.
Yep, and he's like 6'5".
He's a mutant. But yeah, you brought up Stan. Let me pull him up.
Yeah, the Rhino, Stan Efferding. Stan Efferding was breaking all-time world records in powerlifting in his late 40s. He was probably the age that I am right now. I'm 47. And Stan is probably 57 or 58, I believe.
So I have a video of him just doing some leg extensions, and he's just still striated.
Yep.
Just a monster.
Always shredded. And his numbers in powerlifting, he did a 837, or maybe he did higher deadlift, but in one competition, I know he did 837 deadlift. He did a 606 bench and like an 881 squat. Dude. He was just an absolute monster. Broke the all-time world record at the 308 weight class and 275 weight class. Just a beast. The creator of the vertical diet. And
does he have the world record for yelling the loudest?
Oh yeah, making the most noise. Stan's also a fan of sprints. He'll like, sprint. He has a treadmill. He'll like sprint on a treadmill, or he will, he doesn't do that much sprinting outside, I don't think. But he will do stairs and stuff like that. So each person has to figure out like what's going to work well for them, what's going to feel good for them. For me, I sprint and I mess around with that here and there, but it's best for me to, if I'm going to mess around with a sprint, it's best for me to have a hill.
Right.
Because a hill is just like way less risk of injury, slows you down quite a bit.
Yeah. So then something like the stealth sled, right, would be pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah. Pushing into the sled or any of that kind of stuff is, or dragging a sled. Yeah. Dragging a sled behind you is great because it's going to slow you down too. So those are all really good ideas. But I think that people think, at the age of like 40, like shit's over with. And it's really just the start, I think. My wife's in the best shape of her life. I feel like I'm in the best shape of my life. I know a lot of other people that are our age that are really taking a lot of like pride in it. I think the cool thing, hopefully for some people, as you get older, you just end up in a different place. Hopefully you acquired like some money, like maybe you're not like have crazy amount of money, but hopefully when you're 50, you have more money than when you were 20. Most of the time when you're 20, you're pretty broke. And it might be harder as you're trying to build your career when you're 25, 30, when you're 35, might be like those might be like sticky areas where it's like a little harder for you to spend as much time training. But what I see from people that are like 50, 55, they're able to spend more time, or at least make it more of a priority, I should say, with going on walks and being active and taking their nutrition seriously. You know, you mentioned earlier about having a conversation with the relative, and I ended up getting a little off track on some of that.
Yeah.
But what I wanted to mention there was to try to figure out what they like to do.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what's something that they like to do? I think if we start with activity, or movement, it may be easier than starting out with diet. I found that diet kind of means that you are investigating someone's like life, and you're like judging someone's life.
Mm-hmm.
And when you start to tell them like, hey, you know, you should try a carnivore diet, or you should, you know, it's way too much sometimes to get into with some people. Even though a carnivore diet seems to really help like 99 or 98% of autoimmune disorders, people still don't want to give it a go, even though it seems like it can be really helpful for a lot of people. But I understand some of the resistance when it comes to diet, because it's tough. It's not an easy thing to do, but there should be a little less resistance when it comes to movement. So what does someone like to do? Do they like yoga? You know, just encourage more of that. Oh, that's cool. You did yoga last year. Like, have you had an opportunity to go anytime this year? Oh, you know, kind of fell off on it. Well, that would be amazing if you got back into that. That would be a good start. I personally am not a fan of yoga. I don't think it really provides a ton of value, but people like it. They enjoy it. That's just my own, like, whatever with it. But it's an activity, right? And not only is it an activity, it's something that you're doing with a community of people. And that's great for people to say, oh, hi, Sally, here, you know, and you're there every Tuesday night or whatever. And you get to meet people. And then those people, they're happy when they see you. You're happy when you see them. And then you have coffee with those people and you hang out with those people. And those people say, hey, you ever tried this diet? You know, I've been doing this for 3 weeks and I was finally able to lose some weight. And the person's like, oh my God, you know, and then that's how you're able to gain momentum. So try to find something that you like. Did you used to like to ride your bike? Did you, and you don't have a bike anymore or whatever? Like, it's not easy to like get into stuff. It's not easy to figure out, like, where do I even go for a bike? I haven't had a bike since I was a kid. You know, you're going to have to go to a store. You know, here in Davis, there's bikes everywhere. But yeah, find something that someone likes, and hopefully they can start with that. I think movement is the first place to start, though, because I think it's a little easier to just say, okay, you like walking, or you like it enough to where you can listen to a podcast. You said you can commit to 30 minutes of walking a day. How about 30 minutes of walking every day for 30 days? So let's just see what happens with it, you know? Mm-hmm. A lot of times once someone does that, they're going to start to have other questions. You know, they're not going to want to put that effort in and then have like no results. Mm-hmm. Most likely they will probably actually lose a little bit of weight if they weren't really moving that much before, just from that activity. And I don't think that's too much to ask.
Mm-hmm. Being able to handle the stresses of your day, the stress of exercise, and being able to stick to your nutrition plan takes good rest and good quality sleep the night before. And if your mouth is opening during sleep, or if you're snoring, well, your sleep quality is compromised. That's why we've partnered with the best mouth tape in the game, Hostage Tape. If you have a beard, it's going to stay on. If you have a CPAP, it's going to stay on. This tape is not going to fall off your mouth like most other tapes do when you're asleep. And to enhance the way you breathe through your nose, they also have nose strips.
Head over to hostagetape.com/powerproject where you can get a 3-month supply of hostage tape for only 65 cents a night. On top of that, you're going to receive a free pack of nose strips as well as a bedside tin. Again, that's at hostagetape.com/powerproject. Links in the description as well as the podcast show notes. So yeah, if someone is in pain, and we'll just keep with the theme of like a 40-year-old that hasn't been moving much and they're in pain, is just walking step one?
Yeah, I mean, walking, if they're able to handle some walking, you just want to be careful you don't overdo the walking, because walking can actually put you in a lot of pain too. If you walk too much, it can kind of stiffen up your body quite a bit. I think walking is a great movement. I think, we're learning a lot about rope flow over here. I really think that that's a great movement. Really just, again, getting on a bike is a good idea. There's just so many options. I think probably the most underrated piece of equipment, well, it's not really underrated. I guess it gets made fun of the most, is elliptical machine. It's the greatest piece of cardio equipment ever created by a long shot. And the reason is that you can use the hell out of that thing. You can use it all the time. It's not going to make you sore. It's not going to hurt anything. It's like impossible. You know what I mean? Like the maybe getting on and off it for some people might be a little weird. But for the most part, it's so smooth. So there's like pretty low impact. You're going to sweat your ass off on there. Something like that could be great. Way better than running, I think. And probably in a way, I can't say it's better than walking just because you're going to be walking outside. But if you could use the elliptical outside, which they have elliptical trainers that I've seen people around here in Davis use they're like moving on the sidewalk or whatever. But anyway, elliptical is absolutely incredible. And I think that could be a great place for a lot of people to start that are in pain.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm trying to formulate my thoughts around the benefits of the assault bike, but I know that that thing's pretty spicy, right? Like it bites back at you. Mm-hmm. But if you have access to an assault bike, it doesn't take much time. It takes a lot of effort, but it doesn't take time to just annihilate yourself. You just hit the button that says intervals. It'll say something like 2010 and like the number 8. Mm-hmm. And you just click start. And for 20 seconds, you're on. 10 seconds, you're off. And then it does that for 8 rounds. I'm not good at math, but you end up with like less than 5 minutes of work and you are thrashed. I just feel like anybody can work that into their day. No matter the busiest person in the world has an additional like 3.5 minutes to do this like quick interval session. And for me, it like my quads are burning for like 10 minutes afterwards.
Changes your mood instantly too.
Instantly.
Yeah. Makes you, it just makes you feel better in general. So I think that, we talked about kind of a lot of habits here today. Obviously there's a lot of different things to get into. But I think just to give a little recap before we get into some of these other athletes, I think, walking is critical. Some form of resistance is critical. When I say critical, it doesn't mean that you absolutely have to do it, but I would strongly recommend that you do it. And there's different versions of it. A lot of people might not even know, but like you can just throw on a weighted vest and do a lot of different stuff. Like I don't always love the idea of the gym because the gym associates people with like time and things just being a time suck. I think some people like that about the gym. I actually always like that about the gym. It's kind of a nice distraction. You drive, 15, 20 minutes to somewhere. And then you're there for an hour and a half. And then you drive. Like, I really have always liked it kind of for that reason. But I understand that maybe not everybody, loves it for that reason. But there's so many other things you can do. Exercise can be done almost anywhere. So I would strongly recommend, looking into getting some sort of weighted vest, walking around with a weighted vest that is maybe about 10% of your body weight. Is totally reasonable. It doesn't have to be crazy heavy. So if you weigh 200 pounds, you want a vest that's like 20 pounds. That would be a great place to start. Some sprints here or there could be a really good idea. These are all things to help keep you kind of young and spry. I'm trying to think of some of the things I do to keep myself out of pain. And, probably number one is just the way that I train. Like the way that you train is going to dictate how fucked up you get. For me, the careful planning of training is important. Just being cautious and being careful is huge. But then the second thing that helps me a lot with pain is just myofascial release stuff, which we talked about forever. And I guarantee you, Tom Brady and some of these other great athletes that played into their 40s and even beyond just their early 40s, they have taken time to either get massages done, have someone else work on their soft tissue, or they have done some of their own myofascial release.
Yeah, Tom Brady was 45 when he retired.
Damn.
Dude.
And still winning Super Bowls and stuff,
Yeah.
Which is unheard of for like that position and stuff too, right? Like, football players are sort of done at like 30, 35, somewhere in that range. 35 for an offensive player that's not a lineman is 5 years too old.
He had a really good run. You got your money's worth with that athlete.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, here he is. I mean, so on the Buccaneers, so this would have been his final season, right? Or I don't know if he played 2 with him, but I mean, he's getting hit.
Yep.
It looks like he's still having a great time.
Yeah, he's getting first downs and running with the football and all that stuff. See if you can bring up Nick Best. Nick Best is probably close to 60 at this time, too. I got to get some of these guys on the podcast.
That'd be sick.
Nick Best, I think he still runs a podcast with John Anderson. And John Anderson is like in his 50s.
Okay. Yeah, I did have this pulled up.
Yeah, Nick Best. He was on a show on the History Channel where they had a bunch of strongman athletes on there. But he's an all-time great. He's a legend in the sport. I think he's out in Las Vegas. Great lifter, great strongman athlete, absolute beast. Still doing it into his, I think he's getting to be like 60 years old. And it's just crazy to see these guys, lifting these weights and doing these things. But, on Instagram too, you see all kinds of athletes, all kinds of different people doing all kinds of amazing stuff at later ages. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that we're not really talking that much about, but we should make sure that we talk about it is, and some of these athletes, they might not really adhere to some of this, but I would imagine like Brady and some of these other guys probably have, is movement is critical, So I mentioned myofascial release and I mentioned running and lifting and these different things, but you want to try to figure out a way to improve your movement and your movement practice. You want movement to be a practice. You want to get better at movement. And that's why Nsima and myself and Andrew were starting to fall in love with this idea of the rope flow stuff, is because it really feels like it unwinds your body. It feels like in some way it's a form of like decompression of the spine. I don't think that it actually decompresses your spine necessarily, like hanging upside down would or something like that, but it just feels really good. It feels different. It doesn't feel like the same old compression that you get from doing like a heavy deadlift or something like that.
And then let me pull up one of the GOATs. So George Foreman was, let's see how old. He was 48 when he retired.
Damn.
What trips me out about him is it's like, yeah, he fought Muhammad Ali and Evander Holyfield. It's just insane to me.
Man, he was unbelievable. And yeah, he came back. I think he was like making his run again when he was like mid 40s. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and he retired at 48. And look at him freaking bouncing around the ring and all that stuff. And like, I don't know. It was just kind of funny back then because they always talked about like what a big boy he was and that he was like almost trying to make it out like he's fat. Mm-hmm. And okay, he's in the ring with Evander Holyfield, who is shredded. But Foreman certainly doesn't look fat. It's just great how high up he's got the trunks.
Yeah. He's doing the fit chick thing.
Yeah, he invented that. He invented Lululemon.
And how big were his forearms?
Yeah, supposedly he had like 18-inch forearms.
Dude.
And so that's why he did that
yeah, what do you call that?
Yeah, I guess it's like kind of almost like it's like peekaboo version of like what Mayweather did without the peek or the boo.
Yeah, no,
because he's just doing this because like Mayweather would do that, but Mayweather would do that and he would shield his whole body like
that's
to
like the Philly shell, right?
Yeah, and
that's
so
what it's called.
Yeah, and so but Foreman is like boom, boom.
He's just like, you're not gonna hit me.
Yeah. And I think that he doesn't care if he gets hit because like you're just hitting his arms and then it just makes you tired. But Evander Holyfield underrated, I think. Not oh my gosh.
Oh, I gotta rewind this.
Yeah. I mean, boxing was so good back then. It was just great.
It was so good.
You got your money's worth back in the day with boxing.
Yeah, you did.
And
oh my gosh.
Yeah, Foreman can take.
Oh,
he could take some shots. This is early in the fight, right? Third
round, yeah.
Damn.
Golly. Yeah, see, I don't even know what year this was.
George Foreman's he's also a heavier guy, you know. So not only is in his, he just put his head down. Not only is he in his 40s, but he's probably 260, 270. That's pretty wild.
Look how big he looks right there.
Yeah, he's a monster.
Look at that.
Shit.
Looks like he's wearing a barrel, like for shorts.
He kind of is. You know, a lot's been made of recently, you know, people talking a lot about Hugh Jackman and, you know, there's people talking about, you know, they're, you know, using special effects or whatever on, you know, how ripped he was for the new Wolverine, Deadpool versus Wolverine, or Deadpool and Wolverine, or whatever the hell the name of the movie is. You know, he's looking absolutely shredded in the movie, which is the main thing to kind of hone in on. But how he got there is, you know, the obsession. Everybody has such an obsession of how he did it. And I'll tell you how he did it. He did it with a fucking diet that's very hard to follow. He may have used performance-enhancing drugs, but even if he did use performance-enhancing drugs, he still was on a diet that sucked. That's the only way to get that shredded. Like, we don't know anybody. I never met one person that they're like, they did a bodybuilding show or something and they're like, yeah, I just did steroids and I lifted. Right? It's like, no, man, like your diet still needs to be nuts. And I mean, if steroids alone worked, you wouldn't hear of like Chris Bumstead only having like 12 or 1,300 calories for the last couple of weeks getting ready for a show. So they obviously work. But again, I like to address it because people just talk about it incessantly. So it's always good to address it and put it out there. But this is an older guy getting in great shape. And if you want to complain about him doing steroids, you can take him too. Go find somebody, you know, go to the gym, find the biggest meathead and say, hey, no, I'm just kidding.
Don't do that. But
maybe.
And you definitely know the guy already.
You know, someone else that I'm a huge fan of is Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan is a fucking badass. Black belt in jiu-jitsu, strong as fuck. Trains hard, a lot of kettlebell training, has great mobility. I think I saw like not too long ago where he was like kicking a bag or something like that. It was just like vicious. It's like, oh my God. I mean, I think he like has one of the strongest kicks in like recorded history or something too.
Yeah, he has an insane kick. I forgot which one it was, but yeah, it's to the point where he can like actually advise like UFC fighters and they will pay attention to him. You know? I think this was a couple years ago when he was following your advice and did the carnivore diet.
Yeah, he looks amazing. And, you know, he always looks great. I think he always has, you know, a good amount of muscle on him. I think it's great that Joe Rogan and Dana White morphed into the same person at some point. I think it's being from Massachusetts and all that and being jacked and Italian. Maybe did that for them. But I think Joe Rogan is incredible, you know, for a lot of different reasons. But he's somebody that obviously he prioritizes mobility, right? Because I think martial arts are just so amazing because they bake that in, right?
Yeah, you have no choice. Like if you're, I mean, you can be stiff and figure out like a different style of game, but
not going to be very good.
No, you're going to get hurt. You're gonna run into a situation where you're like, yep, I need a little bit more than what I have, and then you're gonna try to obtain it, and you're like, I need a little bit more, right? Because then you start like understanding the game essentially.
Yeah, and so Joe Rogan's someone I admire. I mean, I think that Joe's got to be 57, 58.
He's pretty old.
He's got to be getting up there. Again, the cool thing is for a lot of these people, it's like, 57. I don't know, 57?
Yeah.
For a cool thing for a lot of these people is like, I don't know how much longer they can, you know, be at the pace that they're at. I know my friend Carl Lenore, I believe Carl's in his 60s. He said for him, that's really when the energy tank started to dip down. But maybe each person can push it off a little differently. And Carl is somebody that he didn't really get on the train of nutrition and strength training and everything, I think, until he was older, especially when it came to the nutrition side of things. And, you know, I think that the earlier that you take care of these things and the better shape that you get, the easier you should be able to push off old age. And the easier you should be able to push off being like elderly. You know, like it's one thing to see someone walking down the street and they're just like older. Like, oh, that guy's like, you know, someone describes you. You're like, I don't know, he's an older guy. He's probably 55, 60. That's one way to describe someone, right? But like elderly is like almost a different category to me.
Frail.
Yeah, that's what I think of when I think of like elderly. And maybe, I don't know, maybe that's coming for all of us no matter what we do. I don't really know. But what I'm trying to say is I think that you could push that off, and maybe you can push that off when you're 98 or 99.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you just gotta prioritize it. You gotta have goals. I think that's the main thing. So like for me, now I'm remembering exactly why I got into jiu-jitsu and why I never quit. It was because of my son. You know, I want him to do it, right? So because of my son, I'm making myself better. So I don't know how good I'll be if he has kids, like if I'll have grandkids, because, you know, he's
gonna whoop their ass.
Yeah, he's you know, he's a lot younger than me. But my daughter, she might have kids. And so, yeah, I'm gonna have to stay in shape for them, right? You got to have like a little. That's the thing, man. Like this stuff is, it's gonna change your life. It'll change your family's life, but it changes the lives of people in your family that you haven't met yet because they don't exist.
I love that. I think also too, you know, a lot of people could think about just the importance of recomping your body. You know, as you get to be 45, 50, you hear kind of women talk about this a little bit more so than men, but they just say everything starts kind of sagging south, right? And I think the main reason for that isn't necessarily just your age. The main reason for that is lack of activity. The main reason for that is the years and years of maybe even just slightly overeating is just kind of like catching up to you, starting to manifest. Maybe the years of like a couple other bad habits that aren't amazing, not getting great sleep, not getting outside, all these different things that kind of accumulate, but you can recomp your body. And I think people a lot of times are doing the opposite. Somebody, you know, or somebody like, let's say you had somebody at like 40 years old and they're like, shit, man, you know, for my 40th birthday, I want to be in a little bit better shape, right? And they do this crash diet and they've done some crash diets in the past. And really what those diets do is they make you fatter and fatter. Even though you might weigh less for the photo shoot or you might weigh less for your 40th birthday, over time, they're making you fatter and fatter because every time you do these diets, they're kind of extreme. They're not really meant to be long lasting. You're not doing them with weightlifting in mind. You don't know, you know, that it's important to lift weights because of the message it sends to your body to hold on to muscle or to even gain muscle. You may not be aware that you want to consume protein for protein muscle synthesis to be able to hold on to muscle mass and or build some muscle mass. And so there's things that you can kind of as you go from 40 to 45 to 50, you can just keep getting in better and better and better shape rather than the opposite of what most people are doing. I don't really like my progress from, you know, when I was 330 pounds to now obviously looks like shocking, right? It probably looks pretty crazy. But the difference between like the last, you know, minus a bodybuilding show that I did, but the difference between like the last 3 years and now, it's like at least I feel like it, and the scale's showing that. I keep getting leaner and leaner, and you know, to each their own. Like some people might want to be bigger for longer or whatever. I got friends that still want to be 250 and they're like my age, and I'm like, I don't know about that. But that's up to them, you know, to decide, you know, that they want to do that. But you can continue to recomposition your body, meaning that you can end up with slightly a little bit more muscle than fat over and over again, rather than the opposite, which is usually what's done by most people. So You want to really make sure you're eating your protein, which we talk about every single show. Can't emphasize that enough. Getting a gram of protein per pound of body weight approximately, or something remotely close to that. And that's where the lifting weights will be really critical. And again, lifting weights, having that muscle mass, having bone density, along with just being strong and sending the signal of strength. The signal of strength is going to help you to hold on to some muscle mass. But it's also going to be the thing that's going to prevent you from tweaking your back or throwing out your back. I mean, just think about how shitty that is. You go to reach down to pick up an Amazon box, or there's a delivery, or you got some water jugs outside. You bend down, pick it up. And, you throw your back out when you're 30, throw your back out when you're 35, maybe just like not that huge of a deal. 3 days goes by and you do a little better. But, when you're 45, 55, like that stuff starts to be a huge deal. And you get a little compromised, and then you get out of the momentum that you had with your exercise and stuff like that, and shit starts to kind of slide downhill.
It's a slippery slope. I was feeling pretty beat up after jiu-jitsu the next morning, and I didn't really do anything because I felt so beat up. I'm like, I'm just gonna get some rest and then head into the studio. And as I'm getting ready, I'm like, dude, how long am I going to be able to get away with this? I'm like, I'm a little stiff here and there. Like, it'll be fine. I'll just hit the mats and no big deal. And I'm like, dude, like, I am going to be 40. We all kind of have this mentality already that like, it's almost kind of the beginning, right? Like, we can confidently say that like, I'm only going to get in better shape after 40. But again, thinking like, oh my gosh, what if 38 is like midlife? And now I'm on the other side of it. I have to start addressing this. So, I got into a lot of the stuff we've learned on the podcast, and I've been feeling great. And then I just kind of pushed myself a little bit too hard. I let the ego get the best of me instead of kind of being smart about it and doing all the things that we encourage others to do. I did the opposite, and I didn't shut the ego up, and I beat myself up for it. But no, man, like I just think that like we can improve, but we just have to be smart about it. We can't just assume things are going to get better because one day you're 35 and you have a little bit of back pain. The next thing you know, you're 40 and you remember how you used to be able to do more stuff. And now you're the guy with back pain. And that's a really shitty spot to be in because I was there for a long time. Thankfully, I was, I've been in positions where I get to talk to a lot of people to where I can like unwind some of this stuff. But unfortunately, not a lot of people have that access.
I think people need to be really cautious of their dialogue too.
Yeah.
Like, I'm getting old, I guess like saying shit here and there is like whatever. It's maybe not the biggest deal, but I think negativity is really, really brutal. I think negativity is exponentially more powerful than being positive. Having a positive mindset and saying, nope, I'm not old. Like that's one way to do it, but really just not talking down to yourself or about yourself is probably your best way to go about doing things, rather than saying like you go to do an exercise and you say, I don't have any balance. Like rather than saying that, just think the exercise is new. This is going to be cool 3 weeks from now. Like you just change, you change the way that you say it, rather than, being frustrated that you'll never get it, or I'm too sore or too tight or too this or too that. I do think that it's a good idea to try to figure out some things that are that you can do day to day that are going to involve some of these ideas of, I recommend this to people when they get hurt. Strengthen, lengthen, smash, and repeat. Strengthen, lengthen, smash, and repeat. So that actually sort of just applies to your tissues in general. That's what you want to try to do with them. Smashing refers to myofascial release. Strengthening is obviously some sort of strength training, and lengthening is just some sort of mobility. Get yourself to do some like mobility stuff. Doesn't have to be complicated. You could do a stretching program if you really wanted to, but I think, activity, we mentioned that quite a bit. throw a football around with one of the kids in your family. You throw a football around with a friend. Just because you're not currently a football player doesn't mean you can't play some football. Doesn't mean you can't kick around a soccer ball. Doesn't mean you can't. And maybe that like we talk about stuff like this a lot in here, where just imagine if your toothbrush, right? Your toothbrush in your area where you brush your teeth. Just imagine if it's in your garage. Like, what a pain in the fucking ass, right? What a pain in the ass to go and brush your teeth like that every day, especially if it's cold and it's the winter time and you're going to your, like, it's just annoying. You would never do that, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have why is your toothbrush, in your bedroom or in your bathroom rather, next to your sink, and it's like out, right? Like you don't even have it. It's not even in a drawer because you don't want anything to prevent you from using it. So let's just do that with weights. Let's just do that with other stuff. Like get your kettlebell, dust it off, get the spider webs off it, and put that bitch next to your TV.
Mm-hmm.
And your wife and other family members might tease you or not love it or whatever, but see what kind of discussion you can have or compromise you can have, because they're all going to want to do it too, and say, oh, I put that there for us. Like, that's not just for me. I didn't just put that there for me. That's for us. Like, anytime we walk by, we can, or after dinner, we could, do 10 squats with the kettlebell and then go on a walk, Like, I saw a post the other day of somebody did a squat every time the kid yelled, Mom!
Yeah.
Amazing. That lady must have been squatting all day long.
She probably has a world record at this point for squats in a day. Yeah. I also like the idea of just like creating the environment that's more like conducive to getting these types of wins. The kettlebell, slant board. If you're watching football, every time there's a commercial or a timeout, 10 push-ups, whatever it is. The main reason that I like that is because if my son's around, he's just going to see it.
Yeah.
And as weird as it may be for me, as weird as it may be for relatives, it will not be weird for him because he will see it starting at a young age. And if I can hand that off to him, like that is a huge win for me.
Yeah, I just threw a little bit of padding underneath this carpet that we have in our like TV room because I just never want to get on the ground. I'm like, I know I need to get on the ground. I know I need to do these drills and I never do them. And so I was just like, let me just get, if it's just a little softer, I'll freaking go. I know we talked about not being soft on the show earlier, but the carpet that I have is just like right on top of like this tile and it just sucks. It just hurts. So I was like, you put like a little cushion down there.
A little something.
And that's just enough encouragement to go down on the ground and do some myofascial release, or just to sit and watch TV on the ground in different positions rather than just being like on a recliner or just on the couch.
What are people
positions?
Yeah. What about, how do you make the, because again, we were talking about making things a little bit harder. How do you make the diet a little bit easier?
You make the diet easier by being prepared. That's pretty simple. You just, you go and you shop for the good foods, keep your diet simple. There's really no reason, especially for people that have, for people that are like just kind of starting out with paying attention to their diet and they have excess body fat to lose. There's really no reason to go on any sort of really hardcore crazy diet unless you need that from a mental perspective, which sometimes people need to go keto or go carnivore because they need to like cut out a whole food group sometimes. But in general, I think you want to eat natty foods, eat lean sources of meat. You got any sort of red meat. You have chicken, turkey, lamb, fish, and then the other categories, you got like potatoes and rice, and then you have a category that sometimes gets a little, well, you've got vegetables, you got fruit. Those are all fair game, and you should be able to, a way to make your diet easier is to just smash the fuck out of those foods. Eat a lot of them. Have 2 or 3 servings of vegetables every day. Have 2 or 3 servings of fruit every day. Have 3 or 4 servings of meat every day. Or just make sure you're getting your protein requirement from meat and eggs. And you can throw a little bit of dairy in there as well. The only reason I say a little bit of dairy is just like if you're someone that's like chugging down, milk or something like that, it might make your weight loss journey a little bit harder. But I mean, that's the way to do it. And that's not, I don't think that's difficult. Once, twice a week, if you can control yourself, have a burrito, have a sandwich, have something that you really like and you really want to look forward to. But what will happen over time is you will just like the food so much because making like steak and potatoes or cooking up some ground beef and throwing some like raw cheese on it or whatever fits your palate, whatever fits your flavor profile, cooking up steaks and stuff like that. I mean, you're going to find that my cousin, actually, he's 52, I think. He recently lost like 40 pounds, in great shape. And I went out to eat with him when I saw him in New Jersey. And he's like, I don't really go out to eat anymore. He's like, I can make a steak way better than
Yeah.
So that's, you start to really flip. Mm-hmm. I don't go out to eat anymore for the food. I'll probably, I shouldn't say never, because there's some like, you sometimes you go to a fancy place that's really nice or whatever, but for the most part, I will never go to a restaurant for the food. I'm going there for an experience with some other people, and I'm just there to have fun. I'm there to enjoy myself. I could give a shit about the food. You want to know why? Because I'm going to eat before I go. And I make sure that I have everything I need. I want to make sure that I'm like nourished properly, and I don't want to like fall for eating the bread and whatever other crap they put on the table. I also don't want to be mad or angry about, there's a little bit of oil on here, I think. This place is outrageous. Is this canola oil? like who's got time for any of that bullshit? So just, do your own thing but still go out to eat and have a double dinner.
Yeah. After my comp, my dad was like, hey, yeah, let's go celebrate. Let's get a steak. And I was like, yeah, I mean, I don't have any that's like thawed, ready to go. And he's like, no, we're not cooking. Like, let's go get one. I'm like, I was like, I can't really recommend anywhere. Like, unless we're going to we're talking like each plate's like over $100. Like there's nowhere for us to go. Like right. It just doesn't exist.
Exactly.
And then lately, because, I've been getting that, they call it bull meat at Costco. It's a 10-pound tube of slightly leaner ground beef. So I've just been making a ton of smash burgers. I've just been getting really into it.
I think it's pretty lean. I think it's like 90-10. Right?
Yeah. It's like at least 94-6, at least. But the reason why they don't label it is because they can't tell you for sure. So it's leaner than the 88-12 that you can just go buy. It's leaner than the 90-10 that they sell in the freezer. It's really good. Anyways, getting real creative with it, like grilled onions and then like toasting bread. Onions. And it just like, dude, it's so much fun. And it's like, yeah, I enjoy everything I eat. And it's been pretty cool because I'll get compliments at jiu-jitsu for looking lean, for looking in like what are you eating? Like, what do you like, or, do you train outside of here? Like, what is it that you do? And I'm like, yeah, I'm a little banged up, but the one thing that will never ever falter is my diet because I enjoy it. Right now I'm currently not really tracking, although I was, just to kind of make sure that I wasn't completely full of crap and assuming that I was getting over 200 grams of protein. And turns out, yeah, I'm getting like 225, 250 some days. Having my diet in check is like keeping everything afloat. Like I could skip a day in the gym, I could skip jiu-jitsu, or I could rest, and everything's fine because of the diet. And again, I don't feel like I'm without. I don't feel like I'm restricting anything because everything I eat is incredible.
It's a skill set that you acquired, over a period of time. And so that's what we're encouraging people here to do. I want to encourage people too to get lean. I just think it's cool to be big and it's cool to be jacked. I spent many, many years doing that. So if you need to still like work that out of your system, then you can kind of go for it. And I'm not really talking about like just go and get skinny. I think that like you can be like lean and jacked, or you can be like big and jacked and leanish. You know what I mean? You don't have to be, not everyone's going to like feel great or feel like they even look great or look good with abs, because sometimes it just makes you look weird, kind of, to be honest. And so each person's going to have to kind of select their own thing, but do your best to lean out. You'll notice that, I mean, not that we're just like always fishing for compliments, but it's great to get compliments from people. it's great to have people recognize when you're just like really lean and you got, shit going on in your shoulders, you got a little bit of veins in your calves or forearms or quads or something. People take note and they're like, damn, bro, like what the hell are you doing? That's really kind of cool. So I don't know, for whatever it's worth, I think it's just great to get yourself in shape, and it's fun to work your way towards getting yourself in the best shape of your life.
Yeah, so this is me not really dieting, not training for anything, just eating and kind of living the life how I want to. I don't really eat sweets, but I don't crave them. I don't crave pizza. Like I mean, obviously, yeah, if there's pizza in front of me, I'm gonna be like, damn, that's amazing pizza.
But you also might just eat it, right?
I could just eat it and be fine.
Yeah,
like,
I do this. I do that sometimes.
But what I'm getting at is like I used to kill myself to try to obtain half of what I have right now. And now I'm just living my life the way I want to, and it's just happening automatically.
Yep, and this is a great movement practice, the rope flow stuff. Nsima and I were trying to figure out like what kind of caloric burn it is. Hard to really tell, but I would say that it's maybe the equivalent, depending on how hard you're doing it, obviously. I would say it surpasses, your heartbeat with just walking, but it probably maybe represents walking with some hills.
Yeah, the other day where we were like kind of all hanging out in front of the gym, and I was just like doing it for I don't know how long that was.
Yeah, we did it for like 45 minutes probably.
I didn't feel it in the moment, but then when I sat down here, I was like, oh my gosh, like I am tired. Like I was exhausted. Like I was not exhausted. I was like kind of like spent, I'm like, dude, I need to get up and like go eat something, or like I was kind of I was feeling it. I was surprised.
Yeah, and before we duck out of here for today, we have to pay homage to Mark Sisson, because he is, whenever we talk about longevity, I always got to bring him up. He's probably like, motherfucker, why are you thinking I'm so old? I'm not supposed to swear on here. I always forget, but maybe we'll bleep them out. Maybe we won't. But yeah, Mark Sisson is just a man. He's in his 70s. He's still training hard. He's still in great shape, still shredded. I don't think he he used to run, he used to do triathlons and all these other things, but nowadays he does more like sprints and stuff. He eats similar to the way Andrew and I are describing our own foods. He doesn't really deprive of much stuff. He probably fasts a little bit the way that Andrew and I do, which is like, it's not maybe as deliberate of a fast all the time. Probably fast less than I do, because I'll still fast like once a week for a whole day. But yeah, he's a badass. And yeah, he does a slack line, and he does, what is that called? Frisbee, ultimate Frisbee. Yep. He'll do some sprints on the beach. He still lifts and all that stuff. And so whenever we talk about longevity, I think it's great that there are some people that are in like their 30s and 40s and are giving out some like advice and tips and stuff. And the truth is like none of us are really, really old enough to really talk about it that much. You see this Brian Johnson guy out there talking about longevity. And I just think that guy, I think a lot of what he's doing is just ridiculous. I really do. I just like, hey, bro, like go in the gym and like smash some weights and like go on a run. And like, I don't know. When it comes to longevity, I think it's a little confusing sometimes. Like, I don't necessarily care personally about living to 120 or living to 100. Those are not really my goals. My goal is to wake up tomorrow and have tomorrow be just as awesome as today. That's it. And then hopefully I can put that on repeat. And I want to put that on repeat for as long as I can. I want to feel as good as I can for as long as I can. I want to feel as strong as I can for as long as I can. But I also realize like that no matter what our habits are, I don't think we don't have information right now that is going to really allow someone to be very functional at like 150 or 130. Like we're not there yet. Maybe by the time I get to be 90 or something, maybe they'll have more information that will assist us at those ages. But all the way from your teeth to your toes to everything fucking in between. I think that like none of it was designed to be here that long. So even if you could somehow figure out a way for your heart to keep pumping, you're going to look pretty gross and you're going to probably smell half dead by that point if you're like 146 years old.
Yeah, I wonder how good your brain's going to be working at 130.
Probably not so good.
All dried out.
Strength is never weakness. Weakness is never strength. Catch you guys later. Bye.